very okay, Amy, over to you. We're on page
Yeah.
42, starting the sentence, two of the members.
Maya, would you like to kick us off with reading and you guys don't have to read. I assume most everybody here doesn't mind, but
I'm
no
happy.
no
I'm happy to read.
Thank you.
No problem. Everybody can hear me okay? Okay. Two of the members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. They grinned, which I didn't like so much, and then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time. I had to concede both propositions. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentality, such as I had exhibited in Washington, was a hopeless condition. They cited cases out of their own experience by the dozen. Process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself.
Okay, so this is a very loaded paragraph. The first thing that you might want to notice, I've circled the word grinned and put, we're not a glum lot. And that is something that takes a bit of getting used to if you're new here, is that you can come in here and hear us killing ourselves laughing about something stupid we did or something we identify with, about the crazy behavior that we go through to get what we want. So the grinned, not a glum lot. And he says, oh, he doesn't like that. And then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I was really licked this time. So really licked is another way of saying the next sentence, which is the word I've highlighted and asterisked, which is concede. And when you concede something, you give up. This is like, you got me, I'm guilty, cuff me, I did it. And that is the problem with so many first steps, including my own, over and over and over again. I went on to do other steps and got periods of sobriety, but I hadn't conceded. There was still a part of, does this make sense? Not if you guys are with me. Because until I let go of this sense that somehow I can control this and somehow I'm different than the rest of you, I am going to drink again. You know, our ego tells us that we're unique. I did not want to come into this room or into a physical room of AA and look around from the person right off the street, you know, to the person that is really, really hard to stand next to. I didn't think I belonged here. And now I know I belong here because I have the same mental obsession and physical craving that you guys have. It doesn't matter what sex, color, creed, religion we are, none of that matters. Alcohol is the great leveler. So fully concede. That is something that we really need to think about. Have I fully conceded this time? If you've relapsed and you're coming back again, you know, have you fully conceded? Are you really alcoholic? And I've got an arrow here taking me back to page 30, the first page of this chapter. And if you weren't with us in the second paragraph, we learned that we had to fully concede. This is how this chapter opened up. And the example of Fred the accountant and such is showing us that until we give over 100%, and I couldn't do that. That's why I kept going back out, is I couldn't be that honest with myself because I was still operating from ego. And this is going to take us on to steps 2 and 3, where I discovered that, I mean, if you're operating on ego and you don't know there's anything else, you're kind of hooped. So the first step kind of teases us and says, guess what? It doesn't discuss anything about God. It's the only step that doesn't talk about anything higher, right? It's talking strictly about alcohol. And that one I could get my head around. But then what do you do with that if you're still stuck in self? And that's where we're now moving into getting to know more about being introduced to the concept of a power higher than ourself, getting out of ego. And again, page 30, the opening part of this chapter, do you remember the words that we circled? There were 4 of them that we used interchangeably: obsession, illusion, delusion, progressive illness. So we went through that. That's a bit of a recap. So let's carry on with the reading.
Do you want to keep going, Maya, since there's just a few of us? Oh, wait, Sherry's got her hand raised.
I just wanted to make a quick comment, Jill, that beside the line where it says, then asked me if I thought myself alcoholic and if I were really licked this time, I've got the word honesty beside that line, because I think this is what they were really asking him. Are you ready to be completely honest with yourself? You know, that to me, like when I think of how it works, the first paragraph of how it works has the word honesty mentioned in it 3 times. And for those that, you know, don't have honesty, their chances are less than average. And I think this is what kind of what they're dealing with this gentleman. Are you at that stage where you can be completely honest with yourself about your alcoholism? Just some thoughts.
That's an excellent point, and I've made an annotation to that as well. Honest John, you've got your hand up. Jump in. You know we're recording, right?
Yes, that's okay. That's okay.
Okay.
Honest John, recovery member, Alcoholics Anonymous. Now let's try this here, y'all. Let's try this here. Let's try to stick with the paragraph and see what it's saying. Now listen to what it said. 2 members of Alcoholics Anonymous came to see me. Now, I believe anybody did a 12-step call, they always tell you to bring somebody with you, right? Okay, now look what he's saying. They came to see him. Now he in the hospital, what have you. They grin, which I didn't like so much. And then asked me if I thought of myself an alcoholic. And see, that's what I do. I qualify a person first. Do you believe you're alcoholic? Do you believe you're an addict? Or what have you? Because it's a lot of addicts in Alcoholics Anonymous that don't supposed to be here. And you said something, Jill, a couple months ago that I really liked. You was working with an addict and you sent them to Narcotics Anonymous. And see, that's what we need to start doing for real, because there's a lot of addicts in Alcoholics Anonymous. That's how I realized, because my second sponsor, he was an addict. He wasn't an alcoholic, and he wasn't giving me the information like I was supposed to have. Now, look what he's saying. He said, okay, they grinned, which I didn't like so much. And then they asked me if I thought, anytime you see if is a condition. This book is full of conditions, promises, and discipline. If I thought myself an alcoholic and if I was licked this time, see, we got to ask people this here. And then he say, I had to concede both propositions. What was the propositions? Is you ready? Do you want to do this work? He had to listen to what they was talking about, because look what he finna say. They piled on me heaps of evidence to the effect that an alcoholic mentally, such as I exhibit in Washington. Like he was in Washington going to the federal bureau. He made some kind of deal. He dealing with the federal government. And what he do? He crossed the threshold and decided to have a highball or what have you. And then look what he say. They cited cases out of their own experience, not knowledge. They cited their own experience. See, when I 12-step a person, I tell them what I did. I let them talk too, then I tell them what I did. They shared their own experience, their own cases. And then he said, by the dozens, this process sniffs out the last flicker of convictions that I could do the job myself. Because he had a lot of money. He thought he was, just like Bill with the ego. He had a lot of money. I don't need y'all. I don't need this program. I got this. Make sense?
So the way I read that last sentence, that this process snuffed out the last flicker of conviction that I could do the job myself, I see that as the sentence of surrender. That is that, there's no more excuses. there's a problem and I'm licked. So snuffed
Absolutely.
out. Yeah. So for this point here, we've got, this is what I've written just for you guys that are annotating your book. I've highlighted the sentence and I've put equals surrender. No more excuses. Okay, so let's move on to then they outlined the spiritual answer. So now we're getting into some answers, not just what our problem is.
Okay, Maya, that, oh, I might be
Yep.
frozen.
Oh, okay. Sorry, I didn't introduce myself earlier. Maya, alcoholic. Hello. Then they outlined the spiritual answer and program of action, which 100 of them had followed successfully. Though I had been only a nominal churchman, their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. But the program of action, though entirely sensible, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out of the window. That was not easy, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as in fact it proved to be.
Mm.
Okay, this is absolutely loaded. So for the first thing I've done here is I've got in purple everything that's spiritual. And so spiritual answer, I've got highlighted, circled. This is where we start to tell our sponsees not just what's wrong, but there's hope. You know, there's a whole different way of living. And certainly this concept to me was new. I had no religious training when I came in here whatsoever. And my only exposure to religion was from an academic viewpoint or for touring around with my jaw dropped down when I backpacked around Europe by myself and I saw all these cathedrals and places of worships in different countries, from mosques to, I went to every religion I could think of. And I found it interesting, but not in any way did I ever consider it was something for me. I know I felt something in some of these places that was extraordinary, but where I really feel that for me is a tree. Like for me, living things are my higher power. Anyway, apart from that, here's where we're being introduced to this spiritual answer. And then a program of action. The program of action, okay, which 100 of them had followed successfully. That's the 100 that he's referring to in the beginning of this book. The program of action is this book. So underline that, the program of action. Okay, this is how you are going to recover. This is how I have recovered, is by following the 12 steps of Anonymous with a sponsor, you know, and doing this hard work. It's a program of action. It's not just attending meetings. And by learning this book, you are involving in your recovery a whole new dimension, because you're going to understand what the action is that's necessary to take to have a reprieve from this disease we have. There is a solution. Okay, so then it says, he's talking about how we're getting that their proposals were not intellectually hard to swallow. That intellectually he can get his head around this, but what he's having trouble with is that the program of action, well, it's sensible, but it's pretty drastic. So already the thinking is like mine, 1 foot out the door. Like, well, okay, I'll take this bit of AA, but I'm not going to take that bit of AA. You know, this part I can accept, but no, I'm not going to do that, you know, 4th step thing and be really honest about that. Nobody needs to know the crap I've done. You know, it was always with a condition. So the other thing that's fascinating about this, and this is where I get super excited, the sentence that says, but the program of action, okay, was pretty drastic. It meant I would have to throw several lifelong conceptions out the window. What is that? The set-aside prayer. So you're about to find, this gets me so excited. We're going to go across several sentences that you're now going to learn the origin of the sentences in our set-aside prayer. And this is a big one. This is about prejudice. Several lifelong conceptions. You can apply that to just about anything in your life. When you come into this room and say the set-aside prayer, that's what we're trying to do here, is have a whole new experience. Open your minds to saying, hey, maybe there is a way to actually get sober. This might just work if I do what these people tell me. And then immediately it says, I love this, the real short sentence, that was not easy. So that is grappling mentally, trying to get your head around the fact that it's not going to be easy, but it's going to be something that is a lot for my lifelong recovery. Okay. And then it says, but the moment I made up my mind to go through with the process, circle the process. The process is, again, the program. Okay. It's the big book and the 12 steps that are contained within it. So circle that. Do you guys understand what's happening in this paragraph? Is that they're telling you that the very book that you're writing in is going to be your code for living. And that's what we're doing in here, is we're breaking it down for you sentence by sentence, because this language gets pretty flowery. And even though many of us in here have been through this book many, many times, we often read new things each time we look at it because we're at a different point in our recovery. So what you find if you're new in here is that something that you write today, when you go through the big book the next time, you may have a whole new experience with these paragraphs because you're in a different place in your own recovery. Does that make sense? Okay, so he said, I had the curious feeling that my alcoholic condition was relieved, as it in fact proved to be. So in essence, what we're saying, it's a simple program, it's written in here, but it's not easy. Honest John, you've got your hand up.
Can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay, Honest John, Recovery from Alcoholics Anonymous. Now, okay, I'm gonna talk to you later about this here, but find out where the set-aside prayer come from. Cause see, we throw it around like it's the deal. And that came from Joe Hawk and Don P. And let me give you a little insight on that set-aside prayer. Joe Hawk had like 20-some years at the time, and he went and studied with the Dalai Lama and all these people here. He was like a real spiritual guru. And when he came back to the States, he wanted Don P to sponsor him. And Don P told him, okay, I will sponsor you under one condition. We're going to do it according to the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. You need to set aside all that stuff you learned and all that there. And I want you to listen to Joe Hawk when you get a chance, because he literally, before he died, he literally predict people is going to mess this prayer up. Do you know who that prayer really applied to, Jill? People that got 15 years and up, because they think they some kind of spiritual guru and stuff. Their minds ain't open to how we on here now. It's the minority, and it's the how my grand sponsor said, he say he's so proud to be part of the minority because what's human and possible is spiritually possible. Now you're gonna hear people say that set-aside prayer came from the chapter to the agnostics. You're gonna hear it came from this, you're gonna hear it came from that. But ain't nobody gonna let you know that Joe Hawk wrote that prayer. And
Okay,
again,
thanks for your view on that. We need to get through these next pages. Let's carry
okay,
on with
come
the
on.
next paragraph. Quite as important.
Would you like me to keep going?
Shauna, oh, I was
Yes.
just think Shauna wants to keep reading or go on. Does Shauna,
Yes.
you want to read from this point?
Sure, I'll go ahead.
Good, thank you.
Perfect. No problem.
Thanks, Maya.
Hi, I'm Shauna. I'm an alcoholic. Quite as important was the discovery that spiritual principles would solve all my problems.
Woo.
I have since been brought into a way of living infinitely more satisfying and, I hope, more useful than the life I lived before. My old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could.
So again, this paragraph opens, and I've chosen to put, like I said, a different color for spiritual principles and the discussion of spirituality, because it really helped me. We're moving into step 2 now.
Mm.
And he's quite as important was discovery that spiritual principles will solve all my problems. So I was morally bereft when I came in here. And you'll often hear people say, you had a God-shaped hole, right?
Mhm.
Or whatever your concept of God is. And I really found that the whole idea of religion dissolved when step 2, as we came into this idea of spirituality. I started to open my mind to the idea of a force, an energy. I could not swallow the concept of a man-made image on a cloud with a big beard, and that's sort of what I'd always thought God was. That never resonated with me. But when the ideas of these pages are introduced in this gentle way, and they start with just saying there's going to be spiritual principles.
Mhm.
So we're going to give you the gift of how to get outside of yourself. And this is the introduction of what we're doing here. So this is where step 2 is really the homework for step 2 is really to be found very heavily on 42 and 43. Hint, hint. A way of living. Okay, so we're at the top of 43 now, and we've got a way of living.
Shit.
You have a question, Shauna?
And
Yeah, I do. Sorry,
Yeah.
I'm just having technical difficulties first. I do have yes, I do have a question. Sorry if you just heard me cuss on
Sure,
here.
go for it. No, go for it.
I just want to put into just from my perspective, like with spirituality, I grew up in a pretty devout home. And I've always had that faith, and I've always felt very blessed about that. And this may sound weird, but when I chose to pick up substance, I honestly felt that like the demonic side of me came out. Like I was controlled by that, like the dark entity. And I know it might sound brash or whatever, but that's how I feel. And I know that my soul is filled with goodness when I make good choices and I'm not under the influence of anything. But if I am under the influence, I turn into somebody it's not who
Oh, I
I
get it.
am. I don't know if that might help anybody, but I don't know.
No, I totally get that. I totally get that because we're not bad people. We have a disease, and when we drink, we do really bad things and hurtful things. But it's not because we're bad people. It's just that's when I'm in a state of full disease. And just to go back to where we were with this reading, I mean, my old manner of life was by no means a bad one, but I would not, this is one of the most beautiful lines in the book. I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. Wow, that's pretty friggin' powerful. And I so get that. Like that, my sobriety is my most valuable asset. If I don't have sobriety, it doesn't matter what I have around me. It doesn't matter who I have around me. It doesn't matter how little or how much I have nothing. I go back to being a disappointment to myself. I go back to being filled with self-loathing. And I see lots of nodding going on. So, I mean, you guys know what I'm talking about. That sense of not humility, but humiliation. Oh my God, I did it again. Or, oh my God, what did I do? Or, God forbid, oh my God, who is that? You know, it's all insanity. And now we're into this most beautiful way of being told we're going to have at the top of 43 a way of living. And I have put, here's my own notes from the first time through this. I put, I have to change everything. Oh dears, I'm going to have to stop manipulating, give up exaggerating, and my drama. Oh dear. And what about micromanagement? You know, I was starting to come to terms with the fact that I was going to have to change my whole way of thinking. And it was going to have to be based outside of myself. And I thought that was one of the funniest things that I've ever realized. Like, what's wrong with me? Everything. Because everything I'm thinking about involves me. There was never room for thinking about you. Like, do you think I'd be hanging out on a Sunday night with you guys? Not a chance. But I wasn't going to miss this for the world. And that is the beauty of this. My old manner of life was no means a bad one, but I would not exchange its best moments for the worst I have now. I would not go back to it even if I could. Truer words were never spoken. So really highlight that and put asterisks, because I promise you, every time you go through this book or you need a little inspiration, go back to this and tell me every time you've done it that you don't feel better, because you're going to be further along. Even no matter what happens, you're becoming, you're healing, you're doing something proactive, and you're finding the solution. Okay, let's carry on with the reading.
Okay. Fred's story speaks for itself. We hope it strikes home to thousands like him. He had left only the first nip of the ringer. Most alcoholics have to be pretty badly mangled before they really commence to solve their problems.
Okay, so this is 1930s language. And he's talking about hand washers and ringers here, you know. So the mangle, so the nip of the ringer is the thing that goes through when you're squeezing your clothes. And he's having a play on words here with badly mangled, because the mangle was also part of the old washing machines and stuff. But anyway, he's just basically saying identification. And then he's the pun on the words pretty badly mangled. You know, he's not just talking about the washer there. He's now talking about the alcoholic themselves. We ourselves are pretty badly messed up before we begin to commence. So that's the word, we really commence before we start to solve their problems. Okay, so let's carry on with the reading.
Excellent. Many doctors and psychiatrists agree with our conclusions. One of these men, staff member of a worldwide renowned hospital, recently made this statement to some of us. What you say about the general hopelessness of the average alcoholic's plight, in my opinion, correct. As to two of you men whose stories I've heard, there is no doubt in my mind that you were 100% hopeless, apart from divine help. Had you offered yourselves as patients at this hospital, I would not have taken you. If I had been able to avoid it, people like you are too heartbreaking. Though not a religious person, I have profound respect for the spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there is virtually no other solution.
Okay, so this is, first of all, I've circled doctors and psychiatrists, and put a star there. And if you are on meds, AA respects doctors and psychiatrists and outside counselors' opinions. And for your own notes, go to page 43 and to page 133, pages 19, 89, 92, and 134. So I'll read those again. Just put these in the margin because these are references to other sections of the book where we talk about what we do have opinions on and what we don't have opinions on. So this is when it comes to doctors and psychiatrists. So again, it's 43 and 133. And then 19, 89, 92, and 134. And then what's being recapped in this paragraph is the doctor's opinion, and the most important part of this is midway down after it says 100% hopeless. And again, here's your step 2 coming in, right? Apart from divine help. And again, that's another way of saying spiritual program. Okay, so again, we're going towards, here's the answer. We're not just hopeless. And then it says it again in the second last sentence. I have profound respect for their, circle it, spiritual approach. So we're getting hit 4 times over here. Divine help, spiritual program, spiritual approach. And then it says, the killer sentence is the last one. There's virtually no other solution. Like, what more, how much more blunt can you be? So this is Bill writing gloves off, right? So that last sentence is highlighted. I have profound respect for the, circle it, spiritual approach in such cases as yours. For most cases, there's virtually, this is reality. There's no other solution. Circle that, asterisk it, star it. There is no other, there was no other solution for me. And if you're the kind of drinker or substance abuser like I was, or could be, again tomorrow if I don't take my medicine, you should be frightened. There's no other solution. So we need this solution. We need the tools, and we need to get taught by somebody who's successfully gone through the program and been taught the tools themselves. That's why we have sponsors. So again, I'm going to carry on a little bit more here, but the one thing we're just about at the end of the chapter, I want to emphasize is this is a program. It's not just about going to meetings. The program is the book. You need to understand the flippin' book. This is a really good start, but going through it line by line with your sponsor and answering questions and stuff as you go along and doing your steps, there's no better way. There's no other way I know that works. Okay, we got one. This is the last paragraph of this chapter.
So I was going to add right here. It's the first time I've ever done it. My women's meeting on Saturdays, we do topics out of the big book. And so they added some, anyways, we did the medical viewpoint of AA from the back, the appendixes, like where we go to that spiritual experience. We did the religious views, and and it was one of the best meetings I've attended in months. So that I would reference here too. Like if y'all have time later or when you want to, Jill, the medical view in the appendix, it's like page 5. It's the second appendix, maybe no, the third appendix number.
Page 569.
Why don't you? If
Yeah,
you've
so not
just
to
done
read
that,
right now, I'm just throwing it out there.
No, I'm just saying if it's fresh in your memory, why don't you take us through it?
Well, do you want to finish this chapter?
Well, we got this last paragraph.
Let's finish that chat. Let's read this last paragraph and then we can go into it.
Okay.
I'll share it as part of my share.
Okay.
Okay.
Once more, the alcoholic at certain times has no effective mental defense against the first drink, except in a few rare cases. Neither he nor any other human being can provide such a defense. His defense must come from a higher power.
Okay, that whole paragraph is highlighted, asterisk, underlined. No effective mental defense. Underline those words, and that's another definition of powerlessness. Powerlessness. Think about it. No effective mental defense. I take the drink and the drink takes me.
Mm-hmm.
And it says that no effective mental defense against the, circle it 50 times, the first drink, not the seventh drink. It's about that mental obsession that starts here. And in my case, sometimes weeks before I ever think about, some occasion will have popped up or something in the past when I was trying to get sober, and it would be like typically travel or something, and I'd already figured out where I could drink.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it was that premeditated, and I can only see the insanity of that now. Okay, and then it says, there's no defense. It says no human can provide such a defense. Well, again, that's like, duh. What can then? A spiritual defense.
Mm-hmm.
There's not going to be any human being, your lover, your brother, your husband, your mother, no human, no therapist, no individual in AA is going to save you. No sponsor is going to save you. At the end of the day, it's going to be about how much work you do and whether you connect with something other than yourself. That's what had to happen to me. And that is what was missing all my life. 60 years, I never had a higher power, but I sure as heck had substances that were my higher powers. Like I would put alcohol with a capital A throughout this book, because that was my higher power. Or prescribed medication not taken as prescribed, higher power. Getting that was the central thought of every day. I was constantly worried about where I was going to be at. Was I here? Was I here? Did I feel there? How do I get there? Anything to not feel. Right? We've all had that feeling, right? So his defense must come from a higher power is the final sentence of this book. And I want you to remember, or not this book, this chapter. I want you to remember as we go forward that higher power is what is intended. A power greater than ourselves is intended every time you see the word God. So if there is any sort of reservation as we go into these next chapters of where you stand with your faith in something greater than yourself, please don't do what I did when I first came in here. All I could see was God, 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 and it turned me off. So don't get hung up on the words. Let's focus on the message. Okay? And that is, A brings us, so this last, okay, this is me again, smart ass Jill, early recovery, very early comment. So AA just brought us the God idea. And that's what I've written here when I put it must come from a higher power. Okay, here comes the God idea. I mean, and you'll see how this develops beautifully over time. And I've written at the bottom, because this is one of my favorite sayings, and I'm sure you've heard it from other people. Nothing could fill the God-shaped hole in me. And I invite you to write that one down. I have come back to that so many times now that I have a higher power, with the recognition that that's what was missing. And that's like a really big light going on when that happens. And you stick around and it will happen. And the other thing to keep in mind is it says, don't leave before the miracle happens. I left many times thinking there was no miracle coming. And once I got the work, it just automatically happened. Anyway, that takes us to Q2. So can we please make a note that next week we're kicking off with Amy discussing the medical experience. So we're going to remind her of that. And what we're going to do now is we're just going to go around the room. We can stop recording, Amy.